honours.
I think Joe's got it because he's now perfected the clap. Oh, that was a beauty. Absolute beautiful clap. So final segment before we head back, little chat about the big companies and big vendors that play in this space. We've already mentioned a couple of them. So I think people like IBM have been in security for a very, very long time. And
yeah,
they've got pretty much all of the, or certainly most of the main food groups of security products. Have you got a view on sort of, I suppose by category, who are the big vendors that you would tend to work with, or, that are in the industry?
Yeah, so from a vulnerability management and endpoint security suite point of view, Qualys, Tenable, Tanium, people like that. For more specialist areas, such as EDR, endpoint detection and response, or even managed detection and response, CrowdStrike or SentinelOne are leaders in this area, but there are plenty of other vendors too. Carbon Black, even Qualys doubles in this area too. Beyond that.
So that's sort of your endpoint set.
Yeah.
I suppose in networks, you've got your typical Palo Alto, Cisco, Fortinet to an extent, but
yeah, for smaller companies, typically Fortinet. For even smaller companies, WatchGuard, these used to make decent firewalls. Yeah, there are a number of different companies in these areas, but
and so, I mean, we're not going to list them all because there's so many.
We haven't really even touched on first-party security, which is the security of the software that your company itself develops or has developed for it, that may be unique to its sector. And then you have to look at things like source code security testing. DAST we've already talked about, which is dynamically testing things that are running on your perimeter. Source composition management as well, where you're using off-the-shelf libraries, a lot of which may be open source, and trying to find the vulnerabilities there.
And I suppose it sort of brings you back to, as a procurement professional, there's so many companies, both in terms of people that make hardware or software in the security space, cyberspace, or people who deliver it. You really probably need to find a good, relatively agnostic, trusted partner to help you navigate some of the complexities of the product market.
Yes, you would look for a security partner that has multiple technical partnerships with different vendors, so that you feel, at least to some degree, that you're getting a wide range of knowledge. You're not getting a particular angle on what to buy just because of the affiliations that they have being
or the skills
too narrow, or the skills they've got. That could potentially end up being a trap. So yeah, and also that they're able to supply a broad range of skills.
And I think, from a supply chain perspective, there's a lot of M&A in this sector. I think you mentioned earlier on today that Google has just bought Wiz.
Yeah, for 32 billion.
32 billion quid or dollars.
Huge spend.
So that will continue to be a factor in buying decisions, to try and make sure that you're not being locked into one vendor, or make sure you understand the consequence of your chosen supplier being bought.
Well, the interesting thing about that particular acquisition that stands out is whether Google will try to use that to get more customers to come to them saying, we are the most secure cloud. Yeah. We have this market-leading cloud security posture management company, and it's now baked into everything that we do, which has always been the concern, is that you buy your cloud hosting and you migrate your applications or set up new ones, and then which security tools best meet your needs. Now you're on the cloud, because there's always a shared responsibility model with cloud providers where they are responsible for the security of the cloud and you're responsible for your security on the cloud. And then it's open to interpretation and skills and knowledge.
And we've got this
How far do you go with that?
weird market dynamic at the moment. You've got some behemoths like Google and IBM and those sorts of people.
Yeah.
And you've got an absolute myriad of startups
Yes.
who are hoping to be bought by the behemoths at some stage, I would have thought.
Yeah, possibly.
Such a niche product that they feel like they can forge their own marketplaces. And I suppose the other thing that you mentioned earlier as well when we were talking over a pint was, you know, AI is causing us a problem here because new companies can just jump on AI tools and use them to develop all sorts of.
Well, it's a problem and an opportunity. It certainly increases the complexity of the landscape for a procurement professional, but in many cases, they start with an open source model. By nature of being such tiny vendors, I mean, literally less than 10 people, they don't have a sales team, they may not have a marketing team, and so they get people interested by launching an open source product. And then when the inquiry comes from the larger customers, who do we get to run it? They say, well, we also offer an enterprise version.
Managed service.
We'll manage it for you. And then that's a new model of how they would grow their business. But no traditional sales teams, no channel partners on board, no marketing, a lot of word of mouth, listings on sites like Product Hunt, which is just tracking an awful lot of new stuff coming in. And then they do their best to market it via LinkedIn and create some momentum, really.
So as a procurement professional looking at the vendors out there, you've got your big boys or girls, which are clearly trusted brands and that's not so much of an issue. They're all probably acquiring different smaller products to try and create an ecosystem of their own. You've got the startups, who come with their own risks, but also come with agility and potentially innovative.
The agility is the main thing that they have, especially if they have background in the problem that they're trying to solve. If the AI company is spun out of a need, which they felt deeply because maybe they've personally had to do various things manually and sort of tweak it manually over and over again, you could start to feel that that's a bit of a hopeless situation. AI is set up to maybe help solve some of those problems. And if it helps you, then there's a good chance it would help other people. And you can go forward on that premise. And there's really low cost and very little risk.
So if you were writing what procurement people would call a category strategy around cyber tools, lots of existing brands, lots of new entrants, keeping an eye on the new entrants is quite key.
Yeah.
One other thing I wanted to talk about, which I haven't pre-armed you for, I just realised, is future risks from things like quantum and changes in technology which could break some of the existing security tools. Have you got a view on that?
Yes. So spent quite a lot of time working in this area. There's two things. There are assertions in the industry from people like Google that the lifetime of a security certificate, otherwise known as a TLS certificate, should be reduced. For many years, they were 1 or 2 or more years of validity, and they're encrypted and hashed using algorithms. The concern is that the algorithms themselves are not integral. As time goes by, somebody finds a way to break into them, and therefore the key is not secure anymore. So then if you make the lifetime of the keys and certificates shorter and shorter, you then need tooling around that. So you end up with something called a registration authority. So systems and applications can enroll in a registration authority and be given an identity certificate. And then when that runs out, they're transparently given a new one. And then that avoids the security operations team, where people are running around trying to generate more certificates manually, help the application owner to apply them and make sure that the access to the application is still there. Things like that. Now, the reason why post-quantum cryptography matters is because traditional cryptography using RSA keys is based on 2 unknown prime numbers, which a quantum computer can solve much more quickly. They use a term called cryptographically relevant quantum computers, to say ones that are powerful enough to do this in a few hours or a few days, whereas it's millions of years with a traditional computer. The big worry that people have is that because this realization of quantum computers seems just around the corner, maybe 2 or 3 years away, is certain bad actors are harvesting the data now in its encrypted form, thinking, well, pretty soon we'll be able to crack this open and get to what's inside. So harvest now and decrypt later. While there were some early adopters of post-quantum cryptography, which is just different algorithms that don't work in the same way, really, that are immune to these prime number exploits. The industry has been slow to standardize, but earlier this year, NIST has ratified 4 post-quantum encryption algorithms, all from IBM Research, out of, I think, 80 submissions. So business has largely been waiting for this, saying, well, we're not going to get on board with something where it's not ratified and standardized. And so now that, the way is clear to adopt these things.
So does that protect us from the quantum risk to an extent?
Yes. Yeah.
So when you're buying security products now,
yes,
you need to be thinking about the ramifications of...
Well, yes, and not just that. You need to understand how big of a problem is it for me. And a tool called a cryptographic bill of materials tool can help you find and track down use of keys and use of certificates in the business. So you understand, like, what is the size of the problem, and then what is the encryption strength of these certificates.
So,
and how much remedial stuff do we need to do now to bring everything up to a secure baseline based on current standards and be more ready to switch in future.
So I think the sort of summary of that is quantum's a risk. You can protect yourself to an extent by looking at the way that certification and stuff like that is applied for products you're buying today.
Yes.
But it's definitely worth getting specialist advice. I think this is a good
Definitely, yes.
Now, we just pulled back into the marina and I'm getting blown around and I've got a horrible feeling I'm going to gash up this this mooring really badly.
Or the boat next to it.
Or yes. Oh, there's a swan.
Well, here comes the swan to break my arm, apparently.
Hello. Oh, let's hope it's not going to attack. So I think while we're trying to protect ourselves from birds and crashing into jetties, I'm going to call this a day because I do not want Harry filming this, because this could get very dangerous. So I'm going to, mate, we'll call it a day there and I'm going to focus on this. All right, catch you later.
This is because we patronise the horse and jockey rather than the swan.
Oh God, I'm actually genuinely quite nervous about that.